You're very welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your host James, and I am talking to Gerald R. Clark. He is the author of Seventh Planet Mercury Rising, and that is what we are discussing today. Of course, you can check out Gerald at geraldclark77.com. Check out his symposium in Mexico, in the Yucatan, his blog, and everything else there. You with me, Gerald?
I'm with you, buddy. How do you hear me?
I hear you clear. It's great to have you back, Gerald. Great to hear Tablet 2 there to tie everything in what we just talked about. Of course, we're going to tuck into Tablet 3 now as well for the second half of the show. Tablet 3, the key of wisdom, Gerald. Wisdom is power, knowledge is power. Knowledge and wisdom is not necessarily the same thing. And there will be power-hungry people out there who understand this, and there will be people that don't care about knowledge. But, knowledge and wisdom is not necessarily the same thing, Gerald. For me, knowledge is facts, data, stuff like that, and wisdom is how to use that. Not just to know the knowledge, but how to use it, utilize it for the benefit of hopefully good. Hopefully for the benefit of something good, but that's normally what you would use wisdom for. But would it be right to say that, Gerald? Is that what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to just connect a couple dots for you. Remember we talked about the hillbilly rules of learning, where you do the rote understanding, application, and correlation. Well, I think the application is equivalent to knowledge. See, when you apply the knowledge with experience, it leads to wisdom. So I think that's kind of like equivalent to the correlation level, if you will. So I think we're in agreement. But knowledge and wisdom are not the same. Knowledge is like a fact in the theory. A fact is only a fact in the theory. So
Sure.
So I think knowledge is like a building block coupled with experience that produces wisdom.
Sure. Transmuting the ego, Gerald. This is some pride, subjugation of the ego. It's something I often talk about with a lot of people, and it's something I find it very, very difficult to get across to people. Number one, most people won't even admit that they have an ego. That's usually the egotistical people. They don't even see it and get how their ego plays out. It's something everybody has. And to even talk about the subjugation of the ego to some people, there's only going to be a handful of people you could talk to about that. Maybe let's talk about the importance of this and this knowledge.
Yeah, well, I wanted to give you an example of, imagine Thoth took on this role in the last tablet where he says he wants to be mankind's teacher. And he pulls some students into the classroom, and he gets the real zealous ones in the front that, A, want to absorb what he has to say without any, acoustic problems, hearing what he has to say. And then you've got the ones in the front that feel like they already know, or they'll sit in the back. They feel like they already know everything. This is your classic teenage phase that kids go through, where they know it all and they won't listen to their parents, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in general, if you think about pride of knowledge and not being open to the lessons that he's trying to teach you, he's telling you, well, that's a real impediment to gaining wisdom. So number one, overweening pride is a big problem, and it's a big part of the building up of an ego that many religions recognize as the real struggle in life to ascend, is to be able to transmute your own ego and realize your connectedness to the source. So I think in that sense the ego is a false perception image of oneself relative to a community that is usually not very serving of the individual. So I could see why he would say that's a prerequisite. And also, remember when we were talking about alchemy just earlier, that the two prerequisites to participate in this vertical relationship with them, like in the last end of the tablet, you're saying, for those that work on transmuting the darkness of themselves, he's telling you these 32 plus thought can have these avatar experiences overtake your body and guide you in your actions or your thoughts to the place where you're waking up further. And I think a lot of people that are connecting that going, hey, that's happened to me, call it a synchronicity or whatever you will, but that happened to me. and I'm hearing this from lots of people as well. So I think that's real, and it also is discussed about Thoth being able to do this as well. So transmuting the ego turns out to be one of the prerequisites to having the alchemical interaction, which is with Thoth, what he's talking about here.
You got to be open to knowledge for this, though, Gerald. You got to be an open individual.
What's that?
You got to be open to receive knowledge, and you got to be open to many sources. You got to open your heart, your mind. You got to, be a philosophical person, Gerald, to be in the running for this.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things he challenges to do is when you obtain this knowledge that you discourse with the ignorant as well, the ones who don't know it, without judgment. So, he tells you, and that knowledge could come from any source, and not to be a judge of it, because you judge something and no one's going to with you at the same level anymore once you do that. Yeah, and one of the last, and actually he's kind of laying out through the whole tablet these generic rules for living that lead to wisdom. And one of the things other areas he talks about is challenging us to live an extraordinary life. And that was interesting to me because some time ago when I was a structural integrator, I got invited by a radio station out of Del Mar, California to participate with him in some advanced adult education. I think they called it landmark education. And so I went and participated, and I realized that one of the things they were asking people to do was to have a view of themselves to live an extraordinary life. And it had to do with ultimately finding their passion and sharing it with the community. Well, it turns out that shows up in this tablet, talking about living a heartfelt life such that you're on fire about what it shows up later, so I won't jump too far ahead. Sure. But as part of this extraordinary life, really what he's talking about is following this archetype, this hero's path that's embedded in us all. Remember, we talked about that as well in chapter 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot to that. So not settling for something that by looking at the spectrum of people who have gone through the simulator, that you can achieve great things in this life if you only sign up to the hero's path, right? That's what he's saying.
Sure.
So the rules that he gives for living, I think, start crossing over with some of the New Testament teachings as well. So kind of listen for that as you're hearing some of the advice he's telling you to ascribe to wisdom. Number one, he says the most important of all the rules is love, and to follow your heart that will lead you to that. So when he says follow your heart, think about the bioenergetic, the biosonic, all the electromagnetic interfaces your body has with your environment. Well, if you're attuned to that, then this gut feeling of right or wrong is intuitive. And that's what I think he means by following your heart, because it generally doesn't lie to you. And he tells you to be law-abiding. I don't think that would apply to unethical or unjust laws, because the very next thing he tells you is to speak out or stand up to evil. So if you've got an evil law that's violating number one, where you can follow your heart, I would say those are in contradiction, and he would support that. As a archetype, or not just men, but probably women as well, he says the greatest among men is evidenced by having knowledge and gentleness and sharing it with your broad community. So basically, finding what you're passionate about that leads to a great understanding. In other words, maybe even, think of a pioneer, getting a map and filling it out so that the community has a pass and knows where they can go through at a treacherous time of the year without being injured, so that's a service to the community. That kind of thing. So,
I can't help
and also that greatness that he's describing needs to be without pride. Okay? So it's not a prideful sharing. That's what makes number 4 great. Okay? And then he goes on to, and we mentioned this earlier, he further expounds on distinguishing energy from matter. And so I think I've discussed the law of conservation of energy, where energy, to our knowledge, is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes state. So cymatic energy from a vibration can turn into a molecular structure for a crystal under certain pressure and temperature conditions, right? Maybe that's how crystals are done. And vice versa. A black hole can take into any matter, including photons, and absorb them and convert them to a different energy. Okay, so there's your matter recycling. It seems to be prevalent in most galaxies. So that being said, we're already, and I'll just lay this out there, we're already an immortal energy, as we're told in these tablets. We're an instance of the light beings, even though our light is occluded by darkness because it's done by design for you to break out of it. Okay, so it even named the first emerald tablet controller of your first chakra and tells you who it is, and his job is to do that. And I think that's going to come up. And I may have prematurely jumped to their other names from the Hindu culture, but I didn't go over each of their functions, and we can do that in here so you see what each one does to do your consciousness steps. And now you understand them to be those places where energy is held in your body and your chakras.
I can't help think, Gerald, sorry to jump in, I can't help think, when you're talking about how to live and, follow your heart, law-abiding, I can't think of the Egyptians, the Book of the Dead, the weighing of the heart against the feather of truth, to keep that balance, to keep that communal, good-spirited nature there. Otherwise, you're going to answer in what we would kind of call purgatory. And I believe the biblical purgatory idea has been taken from the Book of the Dead. A lot of stuff has been taken from Egyptian culture and Sumerian. And again, the immortality, the Egyptians, they really believed they were star energy, that they were going to go back to the stars, that's where they came from and that's where they're going to. And this immortality,
that's such an interesting thing to think about a star, that it's a radiating energy. Well, that analogy is made in here that we're a dim star in the body that can be fanned into a flame that eventually becomes the thing that helps us distinguish energy and matter, such that Earth returns to Earth, but a light returns to light. So what he's telling you is the light that's in your body will return to the source, which is, representative of a star, the same energy that generates light. So, and that takes me back to my equation 5a that I did in talking about the maximum human energy. So as that equation starts approaching its maximum, he's telling you don't need a body anymore, a light being that's able to operate in the same dimensions they are.
Wonderful stuff, Gerald. Wonderful stuff. And let's talk the illusion of matter, because people are going to say to us, we're talking ascension, we're talking about energy and the conservation of energy, and that's, yes, it can be neither created nor destroyed. It only shifts from one form to the other. And if we think of ourselves in terms of spirit and energy, it's not a big jump to realize this stuff, even with our own accepted science, when you apply it. But people are trapped in this. People are trapped in this physical reality, Gerald. They knock on the table, they touch their walls, they touch everything around them. Everything is a physical touch. They just can't see it, and they can't.
Well, if you do the sight instead of the touch, it makes it easier to understand that you could be in an illusion of matter. And I did this one in later in one of the chapters where I was talking about, now suppose you're in a holographic reality and all of a sudden a toothed tiger shows up and you run back in your cave and you're fighting flight syndrome to see how you're going to respond and all, the counter move thing that somebody's watching you do. Okay, just imagine you're in a simulation. Now, for that predatory cat to show up, now irrespective of whether it has the capability of interacting with you or it's only a hologram, that's a whole nother matter about whether it's solid or something you can put your hand through, right? Well, imagine now the game master made a mistake, and instead of instantiating the saber-toothed cat in the 400 to 700 nanometers where you could see it, they accidentally did it just a little outside of the visual spectrum and you couldn't see it.
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying? So all of a sudden you can see, well, I could easily be in a hologram. Excuse me just a second. And not be able to see entities that are in my domain. But then the next question is, okay, well, suppose they are in my visual spectrum. How do I reconcile the fact that I can knock on this table, this door, and it feels solid to me? How does that light turn into an entity that has the same characteristics as a solid object that I'm experiencing in my simulator that I don't know? Well, apparently, even in the Hunger Games, and where they were instantiating different forces or threats or animals in the simulation that could actually kill the game players. Well, how could that be? And I asked this question. It's the same question. You know, how could you code some matter that interact with a being in what we're saying is a holographic simulation and actually interact with it physically and follow the laws of physics? Well, what if the animate being or predator that you manifest is done so in accordance with the same physics laws that manifested you? And that's where the veil gets lifted, is you realize the only way that can happen is that I was created the same way. And now you go back to the creation of the Adapa, this first avatar, and you go, well, it looks like they did that. They followed the laws of physics, because that being can clearly touch and feel things. He's out sailing in a boat. Okay, so
every time we mention Adapa and talk about him, I feel so bad for him, Gerald. I got to get counselling over this. I do. I got a heart for the guy. He was paraded around and made shameful. How dare they, Gerald? I get it, though. I do get it.
You must be carrying this around in your genetic code from this ancestral shaming and cowering that Irish warriors are not trained to do. So you're ready to overcome that for him, right?
Yeah.
So the illusion of matter, the idea that matter can be created from light and that it's an illusion and it can go away, that may be hard for us to wrap our head around, but science and physics, modern physics, agrees with that. So understanding that that's an illusion and that there's another energy field within your body that actually makes you into the energetic state that has the possibility of being like these 32 that turned into avatars. So imagine you turn into energy, and you're in an energy state. Can you then go into any host or take on any form like they say they can? Possibly.
Wonderful. Wow. So just on the illusion of matter as well. I mean, I want to talk quantum physics. I'm a quantum physicist guy, academically anyway. The inside of the most of the matter in the universe is although it's very physical to us and in our sense, and we can hit our metallic objects or wooden objects, it's all these atoms, the space in between them. The quantum world is so exotic. We don't even observe electrons aren't really there until we observe them because of the superposition principle. It could be probably in 5 locations or 6 locations if it's kept in this trapped well, and it's mind-bending the more you get. I don't want to jump into that yet because we're going to do that. But when we talk about these holographic models, and he talks about the law of time and the law of creation. Well, the law of creation is how do you take and create matter in the simulator? You understand that it's generated from light. Then the mystery is how does light get turned into matter? And that's what we're talking about. Is it a hologram or does it have solid texture like other matter? And then you realize, well, if you know how to create this other matter like a crystal that has solid form, but as you stated, is mostly space, but connected at these bonds, that give it form. All of a sudden, if you know how to create those bonds somehow using light, which is what we're saying, then you're into understanding the creator of all laws of the creation of matter. And that's really crazy. And I talk about that later in the book. Okay. And I've been thinking a lot about that because I realize that is the biggest holographic simulation buster of all, if you know what that is. And that's what they're doing in the Hunger Games. Okay. They're creating these beings in the simulation. I guess they do it. I'm trying to think of whether they do it in Avatar as well. I haven't seen that one in a long time, but I know they do it in Hunger Games where they're all of a sudden
no being there, and the next thing you know, they've manifested creatures, biological creatures that can interact with the Katniss Everdeen and actually kill them. So, and if you think that's fantasy, I think it's not, because now I realize that they ought to realize that they're avatars as well. And were created the same way that these entities were. So, with that said, I think the activation of the Merkaba field in the human energy body is the way out of this breaking the illusion of matter, and we talked about that before.
Incredible, John, incredible.
Yeah, so back to the control structure of these beings who are controlling the sequence at which you get to experience wisdom. And so this connects back to the previous tablet, as these lords of the cycles. And Thoth describes them as infinitely wise and never having had to take on a body. And I got a little confused about whether he was talking about 7 and an additional 9. Then I realized it was 3 through 9, which was 7 beings, so it's the same 7, okay? So there's 32 in the chamber, and there's 7 more in the chamber. And the 7 in the chamber are lords of the cycles, which you ask yourself, what does that mean? Well, apparently, if you think about our cycle of wobbling, such that we end up in a 25,920 year procession around the zodiacal house that we call a great year. Well, that's a wobble cycle. Well, one of these guys is in charge of a cycle, certain cycles like that. Right. So we were talking about the relationship of these lords of these cycles to a potential cycle like our great year. Mm-hmm. Well, there were other cycles as well that came from the Sanskrit writings referring to the Satya Yuga and the Kali Yuga cycles that were related to other wobbles. So imagine that number 9 is coordinating all the sub-activities of these other ones in ascendancy of beings from other lower dimensions, parallel dimensions, and upper dimensions as these cycles come together and merge. And so later in the tablets, you're going to see that is actually what they're anticipating, is that all the cycles will merge together on one plane. So the 14 lower, the 9 parallel, and the ones that are above, that Thoth and Osiris and Isis that are participating in on Arulu, and other beings from other locations, that they'll all be merging into one consciousness plane. So that's kind of a crazy thing to think about. The actual functions of each one of the Emerald Tablet Cycle Masters, and let other people read that from the book, or it's in the I think it's also listed in the text itself. So let's not repeat it here. Let's let the text do that if we've only got a short time left. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we'll play out the Emerald Tablet 3 at the end of the show anyway, Gerald, so people get an idea.
Okay.
But
once before I said, we only went from Cycle Master 3 through 9, mapped to our 7 chakras. Well, I hypothesized that number 1 and number 2 were assigned to the lower 14 dimensions and the 9 parallel dimensions. So that's just a theory of mine, but I think I'll put it out there and see if anybody has any agreement or disagreement with that. So that leaves 7 of these lords of the cycles, 3 through 9, that map to the 7 states or chakras of consciousness that we experience here on Earth in this dimension. So our avatar has access to these 7 energy states, 3 through 9.
So our avatar, sorry, Gerald, basically our avatar, our body, our vehicle, has only got a certain capacity or a limit function of so many chakras, so many things to do. But like I say, when we do escape this body, we can get into another dimension and much more things, basically.
I agree. And one of the things he tells you about why wisdom is so important, you're developing your intellectual life. In the previous section, he tells you that the mind is the junction place between the mind and the spirit. So your intellect is the crossover place between those two. So he tells you that's very important, such that you need to be able to focus that mental power on one thing or thought, which turns into a frequency, and the frequency is your mapping point to dimension. So think about dimension as being first a brainwave pattern that takes you to that dimension that's accessible through your energy body, and then actually separating and going there. So it has a lot to do with mental focus. And when you read the Journeys Out of the Body training by Robert Monroe, a lot of it has to do with being able to visualize on a narrow internal reference that you don't lose in order to let your body fall asleep so that you can experience your energy state when you're out of your body. So that has to do with mental training as well. And, a lot of the Eastern Buddhists, and whether it's Zazen meditation or what have you, have to learn to do a single mantra or such to focus their mind to achieve the same borderland state that I believe has to do with transcendental meditation. So we're told to follow our heart, this internal feeling of what's right, to essentially do more than what's commanded of us. So he wants you to live an extraordinary life, not just settle. And this is the second time this comes up, right? But I used to consider a way of working as under promising and over delivering.
Sure.
And I think that's the same thing that he's saying here. And if you follow your heart in a space that you're really excited about and it makes you want to get out of bed and do it every day, then you're going to be more enthusiastic about it, and you're going to over deliver. So that's the whole point. And then the target of that delivery is your community that you're serving. And when you start, I'm just going to make a comment on this. When you start operating from that standpoint, not just gaining money so you can build up your own security so you can have a safe retirement, but you're garnering knowledge or something that's good for your community and then passionately sharing with it, that's what he's saying he wants you to do.
Incredible.
And he's saying, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, the more I think about this, Gerald, and when I sit on these shows and I can feel my own evolution of knowledge enhancing, we're talking spiritual technology here, Gerald, and I don't mean that lightly. I mean sophisticated spiritual technology, and it's almost like, if you want to put that into actually some words of what that actually means instead of a phrase, it's basically a technological aspect to spiritual knowledge. The use of it for some actual benefit. Think about we're coming into the age of Pisces, and the glyph for the Pisces in an astrological sense is the spirit world on one side and the material world on the other. And that glyph, that run of the ladder, the H symbol, basically the run of the ladder ties one side to the other. And most Pisces will either be stuck on one side or the other. And sometimes the genius Pisces are the ones that are able to go between the spirit world and the material world and able to run along that glyph. And it's so funny that we're coming into the age of Pisces now.
We're
leaving the age of Pisces and we're coming into...
leaving the age of Pisces, yeah.
Because we're going to...
I know what you're talking about. And for those who want to go look at the zodiacal stuff that I just put up, it's on my blog, and I think I put it on my Facebook page. So it shows you the different ages of Pisces and Aquarius, and I believe 2012, 2013, according to my research, is we entered the first degree of Aquarius. So sure. I'm pretty convinced we're entering a new age, and it has a lot to do with the New World Order changes and the change in the Anunnaki Council, which I wrote about in my first book. Usually when the ages, the zodiacal change, that was their Anunnaki term limits for a particular ruler. And it still seems to go on, and it seems to ping pong back and forth between Enki and Enlil's kids on who's on that Lord of the Earth position, and that's what matters. Whoever's on that, setting the rules, okay?
Wow.
So, we're waste time. And, waste time, doing things that aren't coincident with where your heart tells you, what you're pursuing your dream, because he says it makes your heart weary, and that's a complete waste of time. So, excuse me. So if you're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning to do your mission, whatever it is you're doing, your heart's not in it. Just be honest. Find something that is. It may not give you the same money, but he's telling you right here, follow your heart. Do what you know is right for your path. Otherwise, it's wasting your time.
Wow. Incredible stuff, Gerald.
And one other thing comes from the dweller. He's told that that labor is necessary in this dimension. Excuse me.
Sure. And, like I say on the spiritual technology thing, it doesn't matter if we're talking about Thos the Atlantean or ancient Egypt and all the artifacts that they had and all the knowledge and all the vast migration that they could do in the afterlife. And people think they were a cult of the dead and they were obsessed with death, but they weren't. They were obsessed with spirituality. They were obsessed with the spiritual technology that they had access to. And of course, death is a part of that. If your spirit comes in and out of your body, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to tackle the age-old problem of death and reincarnation. I mean, it's to blame them as a cult of the dead. And even the Sumerian records, like we've been talking about as well, Gerald, this is an ascension knowledge, a spiritual knowledge, spiritual technology, if you want to coin that term. Very sophisticated, Gerald, very sophisticated.
Yeah, here's one that's kind of controversial. In the tablet, we're told that love is the beginning and the end of the heart. So basically, he's telling you the greatest of these is love. Well, where do we hear that in the Bible? Well, that was in Corinthians, where it says faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, you're seeing the same word show up again. We did the whole biblical Canaan derivation from previous Sumerian sources ad infinitum in the previous book, and people are still doing that because it's part of breaking the God spell, realizing there was more than one being, and some of them wanted to help us and some of them didn't. And getting that clear with in relationship to the Anunnaki really helps, especially when you realize the Thoth that we're talking about here is Ninshita, who's Enki's son. And Enki is Poseidon, the dweller in this Atlantean temple where he built it. And when you find out how he built it later in the tablets, using the power of Yolton, it is mind-bending, truly mind-bending. The idea of becoming an avatar and going visiting bodies is one thing. Having the rules of the creator of all and manifesting matter, that's a whole nother realm, okay?
Sure.
That we're going to do that later. So, we're told that it's almost biblical lessons. The next one is don't judge your friends, else they'll avoid you. So he's saying if you sit down to find out something about a person, don't get it through gossip, get it firsthand. But if they won't open up to you firsthand, it's because you've already judged them. So these are pretty basic lessons for this horizontal relationship that we talked about previously in the simulator.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Another one, he tells you, don't repeat extravagant speech and don't listen to it. That if that's what's happening, the person's imbalanced. So, he's giving you like some wisdom rules, much like, you're told, in the New Testament by Jesus himself. And he's telling you more about, like the BX, for instance. I think it's in Matthew.
It's like it's an operating system to get you where you need to go, Gerald. It's a good, for what I see in the Avril tablets, Gerald, from what I see in them, from what I read, there's nothing bad in there. If everybody was to take some of this philosophy and kind of live by it, hey, the world would be in a much better place. So, I don't know, a lot of people are prejudiced against the Avril tablets and,
it's interesting. It either resonates with you. Well, he tells you that it's spoken in an Atlantean rhythm, and he makes it like a presumption that if the spirit is in you, that it'll resonate with this. Well, what does that mean if you study the Admiral tablets and it doesn't resonate with you? Mm-hmm. Come to your own conclusion. I don't know what that means, but so the fact that it's kind of like in the Bible. It says. For those for eyes to see, let them see. For those with ears to hear, let them hear. Well, if you don't have eyes, you won't see. If you don't have ears, you won't hear. So if something in the tablets ain't for you, for some reason, you're not going to get it. And that part has to do with your soul path that I truly don't understand. Okay? but that's the best I can come up with. And then so he says, in response to that, he says, fools will scoff at knowledge, and death is their food. And so he talks about, also later, scoffing at his teachings in the Emerald Tablets. Highly recommend it.
Wow. Wonderful stuff, Gerald. Wonderful stuff. You know, it's like it's a wonderful living code. Look at Hammurabi's law. You know, it's in Sumerian. It's like, you know, what's wrong with trying to live by a code? What's wrong with like a code of life that's, you know, doesn't harm anybody and betters you or betters your approach or attitude? You know?
Yeah. Well, Solon was really impressed by the fact that in Atlantis they were living to, I don't know, derive their highest character qualities, and that they didn't really hold money in high esteem. That, you know, living the attributes of a hero was what they were after. And I think that's kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, wonderful. It's not a bad way to be, Joe. Not a bad way to be.
Well, I mean, it's like, look at what Thoth just did. He said, well, you know, I could come and go. I could be in this dimension if I wanted to. He's told he can take our body or leave it. And what does he do? He turns around and goes, well, I want to be the teacher of mankind, and I'll do whatever I have to do, being in the halls of Amente. That, by the way, it looks like the Lords of the Nine Cycles built. Thoth built an access way to it. He didn't actually build the Anyway, but it was noble what he did. He said, no, these primitive workers are enslaved. We originally came here because we saw that their consciousness is being corrupted and they're being held down from being the light beings that they were designed to be. And we're going to intercede and fix that. And the fact that there were 32 of them and that he was number 33 and called the Master, I think is really, really an interesting thing to understand.
Wow. Wow.
Are you speechless?
Yeah, it is. The more I think about it, Gerald, you know, it's, you know, there's so much in the Emerald Tablets, and they're done in such a way that you go through them once and you'll take in a basic amount of knowledge. You'll understand the system of knowledge that's in there, and then when you get through them the second time, you'll understand the depth of it and the profound nature of what they are and what's in them. Like I say, there's nothing harmful in them. If anything, there's a nice living code of life, or a nice attitude or approach to life. It's some people call it esoteric, some people call it spiritual, some people call it whatever, you know. Big deal. There's nothing harmful in there. It's all good for the betterment of mankind. And when you get through that, then you can actually get to the meaning of the knowledge. Then,
well, yeah,
third time, the fourth time.
As we go on, you're going to realize not only does he give you all the, I don't know, kind of the rules of working in the simulator, but he tells you a way out of it too. And we're getting to that, you know. So it creates a lot of hope, actually, because you see a lot of this darkness around you. He tells you it's part of the game. Even, you know, and speaking of that, this being that we call the first one is Untanas. He tells you, as Enki and Thoth are there with him, going through this ritual, saying, you know, don't ever bring his countenance to me and touch him with darkness anymore. He says, guess what? I'm only a temporary impediment, that light is the ultimate. And he actually states that in this, and you'll hear this in the tablet. So I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, we already played that one, right? So he was telling you, you know, I'm a temporary impediment. So expect that there's going to be darkness poured on your path when you're trying to live an extraordinary life. So that's part of it.
Yeah, well, you know, I've pretty much accepted that. If you know, you don't expect the world to be nice to you because that's what you want. Don't expect the world to embrace you because you're doing good. You know.
Well, this is a very crazy junction point where you know that your thoughts are real things, and you want to live by the power of attraction. So you know you manifest what you want, but at the same time, there are entities in the simulator that are programmed to counter your mission. So it's not that you manifested that, but they were manifested for you as part of honing your mission. So it's part of the game. So when you see it like that, it makes you more awake and aware to look for your lesson and the way out when these things occur, rather than when something happens to you that you respond negatively and it takes you to a place that, you know, the counter move had its effect. Well, you're to try and transmute. Every time you see a situation like that, lemons to lemonade. Just think that. See
Lemons to
what
lemonade.
what it is you could do to be the hero in a situation, to overcome and grow in some way. There usually is a way where you'll see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're at the top of the second hour, Gerald. Unless there's anything else you want to add before I play the tablet 3?
Well, I think we've done plenty of analysis of it, and I think the tablet is very clear on its message. So if you're okay with it, maybe we can say goodnight and cue up Emerald Tablet with commentary.
Okay, Gerald, tablet 3 on the way.
All right, buddy. Well, let's do this again. What do you say, another week or so out? We'll plan another one?
Well, I've got a trip to Stuttgart, and probably on about April 14th weekend, Gerald.
Sounds perfect. Okay.
Okay, for now we'll play out tablet 3 of the Emerald tablets by Gerald Clark. GeraldClark77.com, CapricornRadio.com for the show and the archives.
Tablet 3, the Key of Wisdom. Thoth points out the importance of wisdom, equating it with power, and for humans to avoid the ego trap of being prideful, remaining open to knowledge irrespective of the source. We are counseled to follow our hearts, living an extraordinary life of love, abiding by the law, and to stand up against evil. Greatness among men is characterized by possessing knowledge and gentleness and sharing it with the broad community. A clue to start the path to freedom is to distinguish by study the difference between matter and energy. The energetic key to immortality is specified, similar to our physics concept of the law of conservation of energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It merely changes state, which is true for us electrical meat modems, which they designed as well. We are analyzed to having a star in our body that can be spawned to a bright flame, leading to the understanding that we are energy derived from the infinite one. Matter is designated as a transient mirage. Continuity and change are the wheels in perpetual motion. The seven seated in the Flower of Life chamber, mentioned in the previous tablet, the Masters of the Cycles, are listed along with their specific functional roles. The numbers assigned to the beings appear to coincide with a total of 9 galactic or planetary cycles, only 7 which are present, ranging from 3 to 9, versus 1 to 7. I believe these beings are affiliated with the Mayan underworld frequencies 9. Therefore, the numbers could represent the Mayan 3rd sun cycle to the 9th sun cycle. This would imply our chakra frequencies are controlled by them, similar to what I disclosed in the Anunnaki of Nibiru, with the added affiliation that the Hindu gods were functionally controlling the same quantized energy levels for their flock. Could the 7 masters of space-time cycles have an AKA name as a Hindu deity? Probably so. Let us continue. I, Thoth the Atlantean, give of my wisdom, give of my knowledge, give of my power. Freely I give to the children of men. Give that they too might have wisdom, to shine through the world from the veil of the night. Wisdom is power, and power is wisdom, one with each other, perfecting the whole. Be thou not proud, O man, in thy wisdom. Discourse with the ignorant as well as the wise. If one comes to thee full of knowledge, listen and heed, for wisdom is all. Keep thou not silent when evil is spoken, for truth like the sunlight shines above all. He who oversteppeth the law shall be punished, for only through law freedom of men. Cause thou not fear, for fear is bondage, a fetter that binds the darkness to men. Follow thine heart during thy lifetime. Do thou more than is commanded of thee. When thou hast gained riches, follow thou thine heart, for all these are of no avail if thine heart be weary. Diminish thou not the time of following thine heart, it is a board of the soul. They that are guided go not astray, but they that are lost cannot find a straight path. If thou go among men, make for thyself love the beginning and the end of the heart. If one cometh unto thee for counsel, let him speak freely, that the thing for which he hath come to thee may be done. If he hesitates to open his heart to thee, it is because thou the judge doest the wrong. Repeat thou not extravagant speech, neither listen now to it, for it is the utterance of one not in equilibrium. Speak thou not of it, so that he before thee may know wisdom. This is of great profit. An abundance of speech profiteth nothing. Exalt not thine heart above the children of men, lest it be brought lower than the dust. If thou be great among men, be honored for knowledge and gentleness. If thou seekest to know the nature of a friend, ask not his companion, but pass a time alone with him. Debate with him, testing his heart, words, and his bearing. That which goeth into the storehouse must come forth, and the things that are in thine must be shared with a friend. Knowledge is regarded by the fool as ignorance, and the things that are profitable are to him hurtful. He liveth in death, it is therefore his food. The wise man lets his heart overflow, but keeps silent his mouth. O man, list to the voice of wisdom, list to the voice of light. Mysteries there are in the cosmos, that unveiled fill the world with their light. Let he who would be free from the bonds of darkness first divine the material from the immaterial, the fire from the earth. For know ye that as earth descends to earth, so also fire ascends unto fire, and becomes one with fire. He who knows the fire that is within, himself shall ascend unto the eternal fire, and dwell in it eternally. Fire, the inner fire, is the most potent of all force, for it overcometh all things, and penetrates all things of the earth. Man supports himself only on that which resists. So earth must resist man, else he existeth not. All eyes do not see with the same vision, for to one an object appears of one form and color, and to a different eye of another. So also the inner fire, changing from color to color, is never the same day to day. Thus speak I Thoth of my wisdom, for a man is a fire burning bright through the night, never is quenched in the veil of darkness, never is quenched by the veil of the night. Into men's hearts I looked by my wisdom, found them not free from the bondage of strife. Free from the toils, thy fire, O my brother, lest it be buried in the shadow of night. Hark ye, O man, and list to this wisdom. Where do name and form cease? In consciousness, invisible, an infinite force of radiance bright. The form that ye create by brightening thy vision are truly effects that follow thy cause. Man is a star bound to a body until in the end he is freed through his strife. Only by struggle and toiling thy utmost shall the star within thee bloom out in new life. He who knows the commencement of all things, free is his star from the realm of night. Remember, O man, that all which exists only by another form of that which exists not. Everything that has being is passing into yet other being, and thou thyself art not an exception. Consider the law, for all is law. Seek not that which is not of the law, for such exists only in the illusion of the senses. Wisdom comes to all her children, even as they cometh unto wisdom. All through the ages the light has been hidden. Awake, O man, and be wise. Deep in the mysteries of life have I traveled, seeking and searching for that which is hidden. List ye, O man, and be wise. Far neath the earth crust in the halls of Amenti, mysteries I saw that are hidden from men. Oft have I journeyed the deep hidden passage, looked on the light that is life among men. There neath the flower of life ever living, searched I the hearts of the secrets of men. Found I that man is but living in darkness, light of the great fire is hidden within. Before the lords of hidden Amenti, learned I the wisdom I give unto thee. Masters are they of the great secret wisdom, brought from the infinity's end. 7 are they, the lords of Amenti, overlords they of the children of morning, sons of the cycles, masters of wisdom. Formed are they not as the children of men. 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9 are the titles of the masters of men. Far from the future, formless yet forming, came they as teachers. Live they forever, yet not of the living, bound not to life, and yet free from death. Rule they forever with infinite wisdom, bound yet not to the dark halls of death. Life they have in them, yet life that is not life. Free from all are the lords of the all. Forth from they came, forth from the Logos, instruments they of the power o'er all. Vast is their countenance, yet hidden in smallness, formed by a form, known yet unknown. 3 holds the keys of all hidden magic, creator he of the halls of the dead, sending forth power, shrouding with darkness, blinding the souls of the children of men, sending the darkness, blinding the soul force, director of negative to the children of men. 4 is he who loses the power, Lord he is of life to the children of men. Light is his body, flame is his countenance, freer of souls to the children of men. 5 is the Master, Lord of all magic, key to the word that resounds among men. 6 is the Lord of light, the hidden pathway, path of the souls of the children of men. 7 is he who is Lord of the vastness, master of space and the key of the times. 8 is he who orders progress, weighs and balances the journeys of men. 9 is the Father, vast he is of countenance, forming and changing from out of the formless. Meditate on the symbols I give thee. Keys are they, though hidden from men. Reach ever upward, O soul of the morning. Turn thy thoughts upward to light and to life. Find in the key of the numbers I bring thee, light on the pathway from life unto life. Seek ye wisdom, turn thy thoughts inward, close thy mind to the flower of light. Place in thy body a thought-formed picture, think of the number that leads thee to life. Clear is the pathway to he who has wisdom. Open the door to the kingdom of light. Pour forth thy flame as a sun of the morning. Shut out the darkness and live in the day. Take thee, O man, as part of thy being. The 7 who are but are not as they seem. Opened, O man, have I my wisdom. Follow the path and the way I have led. Masters of
receive knowledge, and you got to be open to many sources. You got to open your heart, your mind. You got to, be a philosophical person, Gerald, to be in the running for this.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things he challenges to do is when you obtain this knowledge that you discourse with the ignorant as well, the ones who don't know it, without judgment. So, he tells you, and that knowledge could come from any source, and not to be a judge of it, because you judge something and no one's going to with you at the same level anymore once you do that. Yeah, and one of the last, and actually he's kind of laying out through the whole tablet these generic rules for living that lead to wisdom. And one of the things other areas he talks about is challenging us to live an extraordinary life. And that was interesting to me because some time ago when I was a structural integrator, I got invited by a radio station out of Del Mar, California to participate with him in some advanced adult education. I think they called it landmark education. And so I went and participated, and I realized that one of the things they were asking people to do was to have a view of themselves to live an extraordinary life. And it had to do with ultimately finding their passion and sharing it with the community. Well, it turns out that shows up in this tablet, talking about living a heartfelt life such that you're on fire about what it shows up later, so I won't jump too far ahead. Sure. But as part of this extraordinary life, really what he's talking about is following this archetype, this hero's path that's embedded in us all. Remember, we talked about that as well in chapter 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot to that. So hillbilly rules of learning where you do the rote understanding, application, and correlation. Well, I think the application is equivalent to knowledge. See, when you apply the knowledge with experience, it leads to wisdom. So I think that's kind of like equivalent to the correlation level, if you will. So I think we're in agreement. But knowledge and wisdom are not the same. Knowledge is like a fact in the theory. A fact is only a fact in the theory. So
Sure.
So I think knowledge is like a building block coupled with experience that produces wisdom.
Sure. Transmuting the ego, Gerald. This is some pride, subjugation of the ego. It's something I often talk about with a lot of people, and it's something I find it very, very difficult to get across to people. Number one, most people won't even admit that they have an ego. That's usually the egotistical people. They don't even see it and get how their ego plays out. It's something everybody has. And to even talk about the subjugation of the ego to some people, there's only going to be a handful of people you could talk to about that. Maybe just talk about the importance of this and this knowledge.
Yeah, well, I wanted to give you an example of, imagine Thoth took on this role in the last tablet where he says he wants to be mankind's teacher. And he pulls some students into the classroom, and he gets the real zealous ones in the front that, A, want to absorb what he has to say without any, acoustic problems, hearing what he has to say. And then you've got the ones in the front that feel like they already know, or they'll sit in the back. They feel like they already know everything. This is your classic teenage phase that kids go through where they know it all and they won't listen to their parents, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in general, if you think about pride of knowledge and not being open to the lessons that he's trying to teach you, he's telling you, well, that's a real impediment to gaining wisdom. So number one, overweening pride is a big problem, and it's a big part of the building up of an ego that many religions recognize as the real struggle in life to ascend, is to be able to transmute your own ego and realize your connectedness to the source. So I think in that sense the ego is a false perception image of oneself relative to a community that is usually not very serving of the individual. So I could see why he would say that's a prerequisite. And also, remember when we were talking about alchemy just earlier, that the two prerequisites to participate in this vertical relationship with them, like in the last end of the tablet, you're saying, for those that work on transmuting the darkness of themselves, he's telling you these 32 plus Thoth can have these avatar experiences overtake your body and guide you in your actions or your thoughts to the place where you're waking up further. And I think a lot of people that are connecting that going, hey, that's happened to me, call it a synchronicity or whatever you will, but that happened to me. And I'm hearing this from lots of people as well. So I think that's real, and it also is discussed about Thoth being able to do this as well. So transmuting the ego turns out to be one of the prerequisites to having the alchemical interaction, which is with Thoth, what he's talking about here.
You got to be open to knowledge for this, though, Gerald. You got to be an open individual.
What's that?
You got to be open to. You're very welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your host James, and I am talking to Gerald R. Clark. He is the author of 7th Planet Mercury Rising, and that is what we are discussing today. Of course, you can check out Gerald at geraldclark77.com. Check out his symposium in Mexico, in the Yucatan, his blog, and everything else there. You with me, Gerald?
I'm with you, buddy. How do you hear me?
I hear you clear. It's great to have you back, Gerald. Great to hear Tablet 2 there to tie everything in what we just talked about. Of course, we're going to look into Tablet 3 now as well for the second half of the show. Yeah, Tablet 3, the key of wisdom, Gerald. Wisdom is power, knowledge is power. Knowledge and wisdom is not necessarily the same thing. And there will be power-hungry people out there understand this, and there will be people that don't care about knowledge. But, knowledge and wisdom is not necessarily the same thing, Gerald. For me, knowledge is facts, data, stuff like that, and wisdom is how to use that. Not just to know the knowledge, but how to use it, utilize it for the benefit of hopefully good. Hopefully for the benefit of something good, but that's normally what you would use wisdom for. But would it be right to say that, Gerald? Is that what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to just connect a couple dots for you. Remember we talked about not settling for something that by looking at the spectrum of people who've gone through the simulator that you can achieve great things in this life if you only sign up to the hero's path, right? That's what he's saying.
Sure.
So, the rules that he gives for living, I think, start crossing over with some of the New Testament teachings as well. So, kind of listen for that as you're hearing some of the advice he's telling you to ascribe to wisdom. Number one, he says the most important of all the rules is love, and to follow your heart that will lead you to that. So when he says follow your heart, think about the bioenergetic, the biosonic, all the electromagnetic interfaces your body has with your environment. Well, if you're attuned to that, then this gut feeling of right or wrong is intuitive. And that's what I think he means by following your heart, because it generally doesn't lie to you. And he tells you to be law-abiding. I don't think that would apply to unethical or unjust laws, because the very next thing he tells you is to speak out or stand up to evil. So if you've got an evil law that's violating number one, where you can follow your heart, I would say those are in contradiction, and he would support that. As a archetype, or not just men, but probably women as well, he says the greatest among men is evidenced by having knowledge and gentleness and sharing it with your broad community. So basically, finding what you're passionate about that leads to a great understanding. In other words, maybe even, think of a pioneer, getting a map and filling it out so that the community has a pass and knows where they can go through at a treacherous time of the year without being injured,